Hi, and welcome to 108 Healing Senses podcast. My name is Jennifer Taylor, and I'm so happy to introduce back again Andy Porter from andyporter.co.uk. And yeah, here you are.
Yeah, hi Jennifer, it's great to be back.
Hi,
It's not
thank
that long since we had our last conversation, which was really quite entertaining, I thought. And
yeah,
well, I think we covered a lot of ground as well, which is good. I mean, sometimes you do podcasts, you don't really cover much ground, particularly, but in yours there seems to be a very wide breadth
mm,
of conversation that we kind of cover and talk about, which sort of inspires and motivates us to do these things, really.
yeah, yeah. I did. No, an hour and a half flew by, and I thought, well, we could have easily have spoken for much more time. So it's nice to be able to find similar souls on a similar journey that we're seeing the world where there's challenges, where there's opportunities, and as you also do your Chen chats as well with Jane, and it is a lot of what we're doing is planting the seeds, planting these light seeds in these short form content as well as the long form, to help people on the way wherever they are on their journey. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think that, we can all spend quite a long time talking, for hours on end, but most people these days seem to only want like 30 seconds of content. So kind of the way that we see things, certainly from our social media channels and YouTube and Facebook pages and websites is, if you rewind sort of 5 years and back, everybody was interested in detail on content, like long form content, whereas
Mm,
now it's like a 30-second clip's enough, really.
yeah.
So as a content creator that we're trying to reach out, as you said, to kind of light workers and people that are here to make a change and people that are being turned on from a kind of spiritual perspective,
Mm.
the opportunity now is 30 seconds, basically. And if you're not talking about anything that grabs them in that 30 seconds, then the finger comes across and you're off.
Yeah. We're trying to make spirituality mainstream, so we've got to use the same ways to get to people. And yeah, this, I mean, small nuggets. It's like that in real life as well. You might meet. I've had this when it's like these earth angels, and you've been in desperate need, and you just you had that experience of someone asking you how you were, a complete stranger, and you spoke to them, and you left them feeling lighter. And whether we've had that experience that we've facilitated for others or had that done with us and co-created, it's a really beautiful experience, and I see no difference with the social media and the short form promo nuggets to get out there and help people. So
No, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Again, we're all being kind of enticed by different types of media these days, really. And anyone that's got a handheld device, whether it's a tablet, a laptop, or a mobile phone, the time slice that we all have is kind of been squeezed in, and
mm,
people are looking for things that are interesting to them. And of course, we are at the mercy, really, of these algorithms that seem to work across social media. So if you don't like certain things, you don't get to see the content, and you can end up with a very narrow band
yeah.
of kind of feed that you get because you're not liking other things. And quite
Mm,
often my own social media, I sort of like things I don't like because I want to expand what I get given, not just have this, very kind of small band of things that I'm interested in. I'm also interested in other things and other people's conversations, and I'm also interested in things that I don't agree with, really, to read a different narrative. So quite often I like things that I don't like, oddly, to see. So, and I think we need to sort of bear in mind that if we're not careful, we kind of get driven into this very sort of fine column of media and data that is aligned with us, really.
yeah, it's the same thing of if a language it gets changed, or the meaning of words gets changed, and it has a different or an emotional, um not activation with it, but emotional charge around words. You see it a lot more these days about history being destroyed because it doesn't represent or paint what happened in the past as in a very nice and light manner. But it's the same thing with social media. Is like it's good to have awareness of things. It's good to be open and to have discernment as well as to what's true and what's not, and to be open to listening to other people's views and not want to change their views. I think that's quite an important aspect actually on I suppose that would be a spiritual growth even in itself. In itself, you're practicing having non-attachment, which is challenging, and also not trying to impose your will upon anyone. It's like everyone has their own choice, their own choices in life, and that is perfectly okay and acceptable. That's their experience, that's their life. And we shouldn't be trying to clone more of ourselves. All we're doing is we've got these little light keys. So if people know that they want to become sovereign or have a clearer mindset and feel more grounded and within themselves, or feel like more clear in every part of their life without burden from previous traumas, then they would know to come and have learn from your services as well, Andy, and mine to a degree too. Like we've all got different keys for different things, and people will resonate with the right person at the right time, and they'll have the right offering and service for them. So I love that as a kind of, that's a real trust thing as well. Like trust in everyone will find who they need to find in the right moments.
Yeah, I think you framed it really well. I think the way we talk about that is kind of speaking your truth, really. This whole concept that we can all have our own truth. And my truth doesn't have to be yours, doesn't have to be anybody else's. But as long as I verbalize what I believe to be right from my perspective, then I'm standing in my own sovereign kind of energy to say, this is my opinion, this is my version of things. And it doesn't have to be the same as anybody else's. And then we accept, each other. I think if we could all do that, then things like wars and lots of the negative aspects on this planet would change so fast. Whereas at the moment, we're still in this concept of red and blue teams. Yeah. You have to be in red. If you're not in red, therefore you're in blue. And blue and red don't get on. And we see that kind of populated across, all of the sports activities, anything that involves teams. There's always red and blue generally. And, same with politics. We had some politicians come around here a little while ago and just asked, which kind of political stream we were aligning to. And I said, well, none. And they were like, well, you have to align to one. I said, well, not if I don't like any of the choices. I don't like any of the choices. So I'm choosing to align with my version, which is none, basically. And they were like, well, people died, in the past to have a vote. I said, they probably did. And they probably died for the right reasons. And, that's totally fine. But at the moment, I said, politics is not particularly truthful and biased in different ways, and therefore not voting is a vote, in my opinion. So, I think sometimes we kind of need to think about that concept that, sometimes by standing out of something, you still are standing in it, but you've just got a different opinion, really.
This is a really good point of having discernment of, just because someone's in a position of authority does not make them I want to say a know-it-all. In fact, they may act like a know-it-all, but it's so often now, especially in larger organizations that run countries and continents, the world, there's, just because they're in a position doesn't mean that they're right for the job, doesn't mean that they have the right or the highest intentions for those that they're meant to be serving. Is it serving the few or is it serving the many? And a lot is coming up right now, and this is the year of the 9, where systems will be transforming, collapsing, and changing big time. Big time, and it's going to cause a lot of disruption to people, especially those that maybe have not been so aware of the deeper levels of things not being held in the highest light. But it will be coming to the surface. It's not that it's new, it's just the fact that it's being revealed. And I can see a lot of people over the coming years, when things reveal more and more, is that they may feel challenged to their perception of reality being the complete opposite of what they thought it was. And there being a very interweaving thread between mental health and spiritual awakening, and navigating that in a healthy, sovereign, grounded way. But I definitely see that it is and it's going to get more challenging, like what you were saying earlier, about I was asking you about, have you seen any different trends with the types of clients that you're getting right now, the services that they're requiring? Do you want to say, repeat what you said to me earlier?
No, it's a really good point. I think we've sort of observed really over the past year or maybe 2 years tops. Certainly in the last 6 months, we've noticed that there's more and more client appointments that we're having booked by parents for quite young, young teens really, in sort of 11, 10, 11, 12, 13, that kind of age group with quite severe mental health problems. And of course, when we review those mental health problems, we see attachments and we see obviously the negative aspects energetically inside their field, and they're the things that Chen and team are clearing. But over the past, we've been doing this for kind of 15, 20 years, or, well, probably 15 years coherently. I've been doing this for 20 years, sort of elapsed time, really. But in that time, we've never seen anything like we're seeing now, really. It seems to be that either the media, the appetite for social media, things that the youngsters are consuming are causing so many problems, and of course opening the doors for that negative aspect to kind of come in and connect and cause problems. So it's definitely a big trend that we certainly are seeing from our perspective.
Mm. Yeah, it's challenging. I can imagine that, and I can see it heightened by like even what we said last time about these, being in a war game in video games, and the body and the mind know no difference when you're watching it and you're playing it, like you are literally playing it out, like role playing it out. So your body still has all of those stress hormones, and your frequency is attuned to war rather than peace and constructive. Like, what if more kids actually put down the video games and started to create their own businesses? Like, started really like mastering their incredible skills from early rather than waiting till late when they've spent years and years on a video game, kind of soul destroying themselves, and not living their most fulfilling and graceful way of growing up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to say it, actually. Again, it's kind of what we see, when we've done little surveys and we've sent feedback forms out to people quite often, these youngsters are totally consumed in these, kind of negative video games, really. That, like you say, are war-based, it's about killing, and there's adrenaline and fear and anger. And I think if you talk to the parents, they probably tell you that the children are up there kind of creating havoc, really, in terms of shouting and, coming down very angry, annoyed. And that negative energy, of course, is attracting other negativity into the space and obviously will be percolating into the family. So effectively, one person upstairs playing a video game is having an impact on everyone in that kind of family unit, which I guess isn't really kind of seen or thought about in that way that we're kind of framing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what other are there any other things that you're finding in children or teenagers where they're coming to you for assistance? Are there um, any other similar threads that they come to you for as well?
There's a lot of kind of this whole kind of intrusive thought problem, really, where lots of people are sort of being driven down the intrusive thought kind of route for different reasons, different traumas, different things have happened in their life that can cause that, as well as obviously like the negative aspect, connecting negative attachments, that type of thing. So it feels like there's a bombardment of negativity. And I know when I was working on the SRA protocol, well, it was SRT with Terry back at the time, Dr. Palmer, we were working on the protocol with Chen over the course of 10 years. We never saw anything like the amount of problems that we're now picking up. So on a daily basis, myself and Jono sit down and we talk about what we're seeing really from a kind of spirit release therapy, spirit release academy perspective. And there seems to be a lot of changes quite rapidly happening. And we were trying to sort of navigate, why is that happening? Where is it coming from? It definitely feels like there's a lot more negativity in the planet at the moment, and it seems to be heightened. My guess is probably trying to stop this whole ascension process. And the negative side is probably concerned that the vibration frequency is rising dramatically, and we're moving into a different kind of space. Of course, if the vibration of the planet continues to go up, then the negative side isn't able to sustain itself here. So it sort of feels like this spiritual war is kind of at a crescendo point, really, from the way that we view things, certainly from a client appointment perspective.
And are there any things that families listening would be able to protect themselves, or at least to help with their own kind of spiritual home protocols Is there anything you can
Yeah,
share
so
on
it's
that?
a good question, Jennifer. I mean, there's a whole sort of list and ways of doing things from a spiritual protective perspective. The first thing is obviously trying to remove any chaos that's in the family home, really. So chaotic people need to be kind of controlled, or we need to get to a point that we have harmonic energies or harmony inside the houses that we live in. So
Mm,
people that are arguing, coming in with fear, anger, having problems, that will stem from something. And most people know as a family where that person or why that person is chaotic, angry, or traumatized about the things that they've done or seen or they're creating. So it is
mm,
a conversation about how that ripples out to the family. Obviously, from a purely spiritual perspective, there's a list of things that we can do in terms of, we can put sea salt around the house to help kind of like clear up the negative stagnant still energy. We can use sound to clear spaces. I mean, I
mm.
use kind of tingsles on a daily basis, and my room's got a couple of wind chimes above me that I can kind of just ting.
I
So
love it.
every time I move about and sit down, the whole room is sounds kind of wind chimey, really. Of
Beautiful.
course, it sounds, so it's clearing the space, and I've got a lot of plants in this room, and so there's a
Mm,
whole load of things that we can do to make a harmonic or harmonized environment to live in, really. But the,
mm,
the key thing is, if you like, stopping chaos and moving people out of chaotic environments, which I know is easier said than done when you live with someone that is manipulative or angry or sort of fear-based or chaotic.
yeah.
But again, it's, sort of like attracts like. So those people are pulling in this negative vibration.
Mm,
So if the other people in the family start moving up to a higher frequency and start to control their energy and start to watch more positive imagery through social media, TV, films, etc. I mean, obviously, horror films are kind of like the worst end of the
no
scale for
knows. Yeah.
because obviously, if you watch a horror film, you're going to be in fear, and fear attracts a negative aspect. So, trying to watch things that don't put you in a state of fear is obviously a good thing to consider, really.
Mm. I've definitely witnessed I've witnessed my own journeying of finding myself in the real pits of darkness and then working my way out. But that did come with me really devoting myself to love, to light, and having to reframe my mind whenever it started to have um, interference or negative thoughts repeating, or getting looping back of past things that had happened that had hurt me. But the major point, and I mentioned this to you before we started, is the key is not playing the victim anymore and knowing where you co-created experiences, and however long it takes is you use that path of forgiveness, mostly for yourself. Actually, if you can't forgive the other person for what happened, is acknowledge and forgive yourself. And then when you've done deep work on that, by that time you're ready to forgive and release the other person. So you stop holding a grudge, and when you stop holding a grudge, it releases your frequency to be buoyant and go back into the light, rather than keep stewing and repeating and looping on past negative experiences that you feel someone did you wrong. But actually, coming above it, you can see at least an idea of the lessons that were experienced from it. But until that point, people will stay in that victim vibration until they're ready to acknowledge their part that they played in it. And the difficulty, if you've gone through it yourself, or you're in the process of your spiritual healing journey of awakening, and processing your own traumas and finding yourself and coming back to center, is the challenge is when you start to see loved ones that are going through it, and the only thing that you can do is keep your heart light and hold space for them, and not push or pull to say you need to do this or that. Just keep turning up in love and accept that they will go at the pace that they're ready to go at, and it's okay. Whatever happens, it's still their destiny, their choice, even if it's the subconscious. free will choice for whatever path they choose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to explain it as well, to be honest. Because this is the thing, isn't it? We can only control ourselves. I think in your younger days, I know in my younger days, when things have happened and you've had problems and traumas and things, you blame other people. It was their fault. They made me do this or they made me think that. And then as you start to walk this spiritual path, you start to realize that that doesn't work really, because you have to take responsibility for you, and things that have happened to you did happen to you. But as you said, the only way of moving forward is to forgive those people that did things to you, generally because things have happened to them. So it's like a cascading knock-on effect. And if you can get to that point of forgiveness and just, draw a line, as you said, really, Jennifer, in the sand and think, okay, that was my past, I can't change it, but the future I can. And now I can be a different person if I work on myself. And how does that look and what do I need to do? That's a very different outlook, and that's got a bright light at the end. Whereas in victim mode, we're just spinning around in this same space, creating more negativity and looking back at the past generally,
Yeah.
which isn't going to be very fruitful longer term.
Yeah, I just got the vision of being on a roundabout in it's a disc with railings, and it just goes round and round. And if you as a kid, I remember this, you get it as fast as possible, and then you start in the middle of the centrifugal pull, and then you go out, and the further out you get to holding the bar handles, it really wants to throw you off. And it's a bit like that on that kind of spiritual awakening, and revealing the truths about yourself and your circumstances, and where you are right now. And it can get like, I've really got to hold on because I don't want to have to get thrown off and really have to deep dive into the darkness. You can see it, acknowledge it, and then transmute it and let it go, and do it in that moment. But don't percolate on it. That's the worst thing. Otherwise you just go deeper into it for longer, and it drains you. And you're not meant to be here to just stew and be an angry person or a fearful person. You're meant to be here to be constructive, productive, to learn, to create, to love, to bring beauty and joy to the world, not the other end of the spectrum. But again, it's choice.
Yeah, I think that's one of the good ways to look at it. On the spiritual path, we do know that is the case. And I had a reading last week that I told you about earlier, actually, with Louise Webster, Johnny's wife. And of course, I've never had a reading. So I'm a medium, been a medium for 20 years, and I've only ever talked to Chen, really. So I kind of don't need to have readings, because I can ask questions and talk to my own parents when they want to come in, and talk to anyone else that has passed. So I don't really need readings. And I started to get this kind of impetus. I think I need to get a reading from Louise, which was really odd, because obviously I've never had one. So in the end, I just thought, okay, there's a message waiting for me. I don't know what that message is, and I don't know why it can't come to me direct. Got to book a reading. So I booked this reading with Louise, kind of wandered in and saw her and stuff. And it was an amazing session, actually. And one of the things that happened was my mum came in, actually, and she said, Louise was giving some very, very precise, direct conversation about the things that Mum was saying, basically. And she was saying there were reasons that I didn't do things, particularly what you would have perceived to be particularly well from a motherly perspective, but that was a soul contract. And these were agreements that were made by you and I before you came in. And obviously my role in your upbringing was designed to make you independent and make you strong, and, kind of sort out your emotional stuff, or not really have that much emotional stuff, because there wasn't a lot of emotion in our family particularly. But there was a lot of things that she said, and I sat back and thought, wow, kind of things I hadn't really thought about. And I thought, okay, that kind of shaped me, really. The conversation that we had really kind of set things up in a completely different way from me mentally. I thought, yeah, this is the whole point, isn't it? Is that our parents are supposed to be a pain in the ass, really, and to cause us lots of problems, because that's how we get the opportunity to develop and kind of tune ourselves to be what we need to be. And I look back after that reading I had with Louise and thought, wow, actually, a lot of things that she said, there was a lot of other quite personal things that came in. And I look back and thought, wow, that really, that is how I got here. Because had some of those things not happened, I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be watching the football and drinking beer type thing, really. So I'm kind of quite grateful now that some of those things that at the time would have been perceived to be not particularly good ended up being really good. So, it's just how we think about things, isn't it, really?
Yes, perspective
Yeah.
will bring you opportunity, or it will bring you demise. Really. Yeah. And yeah, pick or choose the direction you wish to go in. But there's so many beautiful lessons if you really think about all of the relationships that you're in, whether they're healthy and happy and constructive or destructive and chaotic, even abusive. Is like, what is this? What lessons are being revealed to me? And it may just be having self-respect and not allowing another person to treat you in a disrespectful way, however that may look. And like we were saying before, yeah, it's not always people aren't always in a position to leave, but if they were honest, really honest about themselves and their situations and their families, and came to the conclusion of, no, I deserve to have love, I deserve to be loved, I deserve to experience love, and this situation does not tick any of those boxes. So what's the best way for me to move forward in my life that will benefit me now and in the future? And if that means friends drop off, relationships fizzle out, you move location, you stop talking to people for a little while, you stop talking to people permanently. There's so many different options, but it's always a where one door closes, another door opens, and I always find that new door is better than the last and will bring you closer to the thing that you really want, and that's love and peace and harmony.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, you're still quite young, Jennifer. I'm quite a lot older than you, obviously, but it's one of the things I've learned over the years, really. As I get older, I'm more aligned with just peace and quiet. Really. I just want peace and quiet. Well, I don't want it. I have peace and quiet because that's what I construct and that's what I make. And that's the way that Jane and I live. We live in a very quiet, harmonious house with lots of kind of plants, and the energy is good, and the dog's quite well behaved, and the garden's nice, and everything has been designed to create kind of mental peace, basically, because obviously what we do, we've both been through trauma and things in our lives, and hassle and all the things that we go through. But coming into that sort of late 50s now, is that I just want peace and quiet. And if there isn't peace and quiet, then I'm out the door, really, not in terms of the relationship, but in terms of if we walk into a pub or a restaurant or somewhere and it's chaotic and it's noisy, I'm back out the door within seconds. So I just think, no, we'll just go somewhere else because that's the way I want to live. I choose to live in peace and quiet, and that's what therefore I attract.
Yes, and what you give your attention and your energy and your time to and your resources also grows that. So choose wisely what you want to feed, whether it's peace or chaos, even from a restaurant basis. I think, yeah, and that is important. Again, healthy boundaries. I don't want to have to put up with this. I don't know, I'll have to do some clearing after this. Or it could be anything. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing as well, because we're energy workers in the way that we are. When you're in a space, I'm obviously very sensitive to energy, especially negative energy, and I can see it with people. I know if people have got things with them. So, of course, immediately I'm picking up on my kind of psychic radar is working all the time. So if I walk into a space and think, oh, this isn't for me, it's out of the door again, really. Whereas we walk in somewhere, it feels nice and supportive and positive, and the people are friendly and smiling, and you think, yeah, this is a lovely place. This is where I want to be, basically. So then, we'll sit down and have a meal or do whatever we're doing. But like you say, it is a collective choice. And I think a lot of us, when we're younger, kind of put up, as you just said, with this negative life and chaotic life and lots of anger and pain and traumas and things. And it takes generally until you get a bit older that you actually realize you don't need to. You just think you do, but actually you don't.
Mm. I, I I I put it down to, if you've had a lot of trauma and chaos and destructiveness and relationships in your life, when you get to the point where you choose peace, and you could be young, I did the same for myself. It's like, no, I don't want to have that in my life. I want to have peace. I want to have more beauty in my life, not the other end of the spectrum. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, I've acknowledged it, but I choose not to live it day in, day out, because nothing's worth that level of chaos in your life. But yeah, it takes people different different amount of times to be activated, or just to continue with it and do the same thing day in, day out for their whole life. But I wonder how much that's changing now as well.
Yeah, I think there's more conversation about it, certainly, really. I mean, again, we're sending reports every day, and quite often we read some reports that are around that whole narrative, really, of someone that's in abusive relationships and they feel trapped and they can't do this and they can't remove themselves. And we always kind of try and open the door and just sort of point to the fact the light is through the door, but you need to find the confidence and the kind of respectability for yourself, really, and the confidence to walk through that door. And when, as you said, when one door closes, generally a better one opens. So in the old world, we were all about, I know in my early life, it was all about trying to keep things the same. And then if we lost jobs or changed jobs, you'd think, oh, I really like that job and I've got to find another job. And generally the next job was better than the one you had before, which was paid a bit more money. And, as you say, it's kind of sometimes those doors closing are a good thing, really, because otherwise life becomes too kind of stagnant and boring anyway, and we don't really learn very much. So from a spirit guide perspective, our guides are kind of pushing us continually, even though most people get to a point they just want the same thing day in, day out, but that's not particularly supportive to a kind of spiritual growth and development, really.
Yeah, and the issue with that is if people put up with poison in their life and their relationships right now, and they don't deal with it in this lifetime, it will follow them into the next lifetime and future lifetimes. And it would have been a trauma from a past life that you hadn't resolved as well. So it's like elongating this process that you don't need to experience so much pain and suffering for any length of time that you're not ready to say, no, I've had enough. I deserve better. And it really is as simple as that. You say that to yourself, and then everything starts shifting. You're like, okay, what opportunities what opportunities can I do for myself to make me feel better, make me happier, healthier, feel free, be free, and yeah, navigate through that. But it is very challenging, and especially being in a toxic relationship or an abusive relationship, it grinds you down, and it happens really slowly over time until the point that you recognize, hang on, I'm not the same person that I used to be. I want to be happy again and I want to feel free. And how can I get that again? And then, that's when the key in the door opens, and it's a bit like Narnia. You're like, okay, well, we've gone from one reality, so let's switch into another one. And it can be that scary because it's such a change that you're not used to having harmonious relationships around you, probably because you've grown up in dysfunctional, traumatic families to different varying degrees that would then have imprinted on you, and you would have chosen dysfunctional and traumatic relationships as you became an adult or a young adult. And that cycle just continues until you say, no, I've had enough. I deserve better. And the steps that you take from there is entirely up to each and every single one of us. And it is choice. And everyone is worthy and deserving to experience love and find their most beloved. Doesn't matter if you've already had kids and with someone and you're in that position of, I don't want to be with them anymore because we're not the same. And I've learnt my lessons of self-respect and what will life bring. But, if you start to attend life and wake up wake up for each day to say, what opportunities are there for me to improve myself? And that is a really great way of increasing your frequency as well. And then you bring more love towards yourself because you're in that space of, I want to forgive myself. I want to be the best version of me. And then you start to attract more of that as well. So you can't always overgive your cup of love to everyone else because you'll be left with nothing. And then you'll wonder why you feel drained and scared and fearful about possible changes because you need to build up that inner light, inner strength to be like, I'm going to go for this. And there are services about that can support me, whatever way that looks. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great way to say it. I think one of the words Chen uses quite often, he'll talk about a service to self first, as opposed to service to others first, basically. And his opinion is exactly that if you don't take yourself first, put yourself first, speak your truth, and basically kind of become autonomous to yourself and sovereign, then when you do those things, you can then help other people, and it sets you up quite well. But I think most spiritual people like us generally attract narcissistic people into our lives because we're nice people. So we go through that experience of having narcissistic relationships, and it continues to repeat until we actually observe it and then make that change, take our power back, speak your truth, and then step out of that reality. And as you said, it is kind of like a reality change, really, going from one thing to another.
Yeah, yeah, and it is uh, the narcissistic relationship with someone who's very empathic and kind and compassionate, and they both, on the general, it's like either end of the spectrum. One's passive and one's being particularly like not even assertive, but like active aggressive or passive aggressive through their narcissism or whatever personality traits they have, which comes from being soul fractured, may come from attachments, and it certainly comes from childhood trauma or ancestral trauma that they're then carrying out. But that victim perpetrator role is, it's that both sides of the coin. You both need each other for that experience. For the one that is actively on a light path to say, no, I deserve better, to have healthy boundaries and to take their energy back and to cut them off. And it's also a reflection for the person who's coming from more of a negative aspected side, the opportunity, whether they do it or not, to reflect on their own actions. But again, if the trauma is unprocessed and they're not willing to change, they're not willing to look at it, they also blame others for their life being in the drains or whatever they feel it is, then that story continues to play out until they're ready to resolve it. So yeah, save yourself some time and just do your inner healing work and make the choices now. Make the choices now.
Yeah, I think again what you sort of said for me captures it so well, that if you actually want to have a loving, harmonious relationship from a partner, wife, husband, whatever kind of role they play, then that is there, and you do deserve to have that, but you do have to find it, and you do have to take it, and that is the big thing I think for most people that don't walk through the door, and therefore they stay in these kind of reciprocal negative emotions for a long, long time. Some people then obviously end up kind of never moving out of that situation. And I think if you look at a lot of the older generation in their sort of 80s and 90s, I know quite a lot of people that were never very happy as a kind of married couple, but they stayed together because that was a done thing.
Mm.
If they'd have kind of gone their separate ways, they'd probably found people they actually did love and want to spend their time with. And, that is the kind of, I guess, the lesson from that generation down to ours, really.
Yeah, don't settle and don't do things because you think other people are going to judge you for it. I feel like judgment is one of those, it's like an invisible heavy cloak that gets put onto people. That people are just completely concerned about how other people may perceive them. It almost comes from like schooling and that competitiveness, and you're being compared with your grades, and you're in different groups depending on how good you are, and it's all this conditioning on the mind and the consciousness, and even from young souls up to the age of 12, their subconscious mind is very open, so they're in a real vulnerable space, or an opportunity, depending on what information is being fed to them at that time, that it can really shape children to be an absolute anxious wreck or confident and within themselves and having discernment. And you were saying earlier, like, that a lot more children now are experiencing anxiety, and you're even getting that with your clients as well. So, something has to change. We have to consider why are children being so affected, and how can we best support them?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to say it, actually.
Well, you had tell us about your new children's line of products.
Yeah, so we've started to make little pyramids, basically. So we make these pyramids that kind of quite protective and supportive. So that's our normal kind of pyramids, that kind of resin, crystals, metal, that kind of stuff. And we started to make ones that are kind of aligned with children that have kind of little unicorns in or kind of rainbows effectively, which again, I think we made one for Jono's uh, granddaughter effectively because he asked for us to make one that
Yeah.
could sit on her shelf because she loves the whole rainbow thing and the pyramid. And then, of course, from that, we thought, oh, these are quite cool, actually. Now we've made one, we know what to do and how to make them, so we could start to sell them. And I think Jane mentioned it to someone, and then someone wanted us to make one for them, and the whole thing just starts to spin. So now, basically, we've got this kind of this little kind of mini um, children's pyramid that we're kind of
Oh,
building out into the website because again, it's kind of fun, really, and of course, it introduces children into spirituality because they do things, their energy cleansers, clearers, and they look nice as well. And it's quite a good way to kind of introduce small and younger children into the concepts of spiritual sovereignty and spirituality in that way, really.
nice. Yeah, I think that kids are really sensitive to energy and emotion, and they love crystals. You watch them and they're like, whoa, they pick crystals up and they really connect to them. So they're wonderful energetic tools. I'm sure your pyramids. I like the rainbow unicorn pyramid. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'd like one myself.
It's a child in all of us, I guess, isn't there? We've all got the inner child that
Yes,
likes
yes,
to
and
those days, really.
I love the purity of it. That's, if we keep bringing more beauty, more wonder, more wonderment, and playfulness into the world, there's an air about children that is very pure, and that is because when they're unconditioned, they have, they're just so present in the moment and playing. So if we could all just play more as adults, we'd we'd ground ourselves more as well into Mother Earth. So let's be the children of Gaia and act like it more sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. I think that's the whole point, isn't it? That as adults, we take on so many responsibilities and problems, and we're all working, we're trying to provide money and things for our families. We forget that we actually are here to exist and to live and have fun. And, I quite like reading. So, I'm kind of making a point. I go out and sit in the kind of garden room with my Kindle and read some sort of mystical, magical books. And you get lost in this other world in the book, and then you come back to the normal world and you think, wow, the book's much more interesting. And that's the place I'd like to live, really, in this kind of mystical, magical place of well, just of kind of thoughts of old. But of course, we're kind of creating those stories in our mind. And I think most of us kind of, as younger people, lived in these kind of mystical, magical worlds when we were very young. And then that kind of gets programmed, as you said, programmed out of you, really.
Yeah.
But that is a fun place to be, that we can really kind of connect with Gaia, the spiritual entities that surround us all the time that we forget about, really. They're there just waiting to connect and communicate with us. And we kind of, most people believe that, that's kind of nonsense and only the physical stuff is real, but we kind of, no, that's not the case. It's the opposite way around, really.
It's like Wi-Fi. It works, you can't see it.
Yeah.
As it's, and everything is energy. So yeah, tune into the right frequencies that you want to exist by, and yeah, playing. I've got a coloring book, and it's so peaceful when I've like done too much work and my head's like I'm frazzled from the day editing and working on numerous projects, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to color. And I find it such a it's like an art therapy session as well. So it's like I'm able to process the day with the colors that I'm using for the coloring book, and I always feel more peaceful. That's one of the other kind of meditational things I do. But yeah, it's nice, and I feel productive as well because I've colored a picture. So
Oh, yes. And it's calming, isn't it? It's all about calming the mind, calming the thoughts, and controlling yourself, really.
yeah, it is managing your emotions and regulating your nervous system seems to be the prominent aspects of just living a peaceful life. That does come with detoxing the body as much as all of the energetic practices too. And I do feel it's important that we have to start with what we put in our mouths with the food and the drinks that we have, the intentions that we have, and knowing that everything is an inside out job. So if you're eating healthy and you're making lovely, like, pure decisions for yourself now, it will continue to kind of cascade out into the rest of your life. So, you'll feel more vibrant, you'll be more detoxed, you'll live longer, you're living more purposefully because you're trying to live the best possible life for yourself. And when there's times that you want to have some wine or some cake, you enjoy it because it's for a good reason, and you're still able to maintain your frequency and your view about the world. It doesn't completely change you. If you're using alcohol or drugs or food as a way of a coping mechanism, those are the honest questions that you need to start having with yourself as to, why do I even need these things to cope with my reality right now? What is it that I'm running away from? Those are the hard questions that you need to have with yourself. But once you get through them, and you can have that honest conversation, it does breathe a fresh air into your life, that you feel less weighed down by things that have just been hiding in your subconscious mind, and you're bringing light to it. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, that's how I try and live, to be honest. I try and do the things that I like to do. And, if I have a glass of wine, I don't really care if it's alcohol or not. If it makes me feel good and my vibration's high and I'm thinking positive things and I'm quite happy, then I assume that by drinking wine, it's kind of helping me to achieve that state that I want to be in. So, it's like there's a light kind of substance drug type conversation, but effectively it's about you finding yourself and being the person you want to be.
Yeah.
And obviously if you enjoy cake, as you said, and coffee, if eating cake and coffee makes you feel happy and you're content with yourself, then just do what makes you feel good, really. I think there's too many people that have got too many observations and rules about everybody else and what we should and shouldn't be doing. And if you kind of listen to those people, you look at their life and you think, well, your life isn't exactly perfect. I know a lot of the people that comment on some of the things that we say and do, and to be in social media, you do need to have quite a strong set of shoulders, really, because you do get the positive people that love what you do and love what you say, and they're your kind of tribe and audience. But you do get the opposite to that as well sometimes. The people that just want to, to poke and create problems and see things in a negative way. And you do need to be able to kind of be okay with that as well, because obviously if you put yourself out into the media, then you are going to get kind of both aligned opinions of things, really. But I think just being authentically you is the key. Just do what you enjoy.
Yeah. And I've heard this before. It's like a third of people will love you, a third of people will be neutral about you, and a third of people will hate you. And if you go by those, makes it easier. Be like, okay, well, not everyone's going to be liked, and that's all right, because I don't like everyone.
Yeah.
And the right people will find you, and the messages that people emit, especially when they come from a pure place, they will always find those that the words will always find those that meant to hear them, and it will touch them, and it will leave a seed of light with them that will help them on their journey, whatever path, whatever stage they're on. That's why doing this content is important. I don't know if I've had this conversation with you before, but it's, only a few years ago, I didn't want to be on social media, but I knew I had to be. So, and I'm sure it's the case for a lot of spiritual teachers or healers, practitioners. They're not. It really pushes us to be seen and get the messages out there, and still hold ourselves in the highest regard and stay balanced through it all. But I do see that as, if you do your inner work, then it doesn't matter how loud people will applaud you or hate on you, because it actually doesn't really matter. If you're happy with yourself and the choices that you're making now and the path that you're laying for your future, you have to focus on that. You have to focus on that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, Jennifer, isn't it? If you look at, as you said, most spiritual people I know, certainly spiritual teachers, everyone's been through trauma, stress, problems, difficult times in life, which push them onto a spiritual path.
Mm.
And then as they're on that spiritual path, they become quite good at whatever they do or say. And then they find themselves in a position where people want to talk to you, want to listen to what you have to say, and you want to share your experience to help other people because you know that when you were going through your kind of dark days of the soul,
Mm.
somebody was there as a bright light, as you said, that helped you along. Somebody picks you up and grabs you by the shoulder and kind of drags you to the next phase, really. And you realize that someone's done that for you, and therefore you're putting yourself there to help somebody else and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And as you said, most people I know, like us, are kind of reluctant social media kind of creators, really, because, I'm sure we'd all have other things we could be doing if we weren't, creating content and doing sort of social media work and that kind of thing. But you do realize that for every one person that you can switch on, as you said, that's a light that's coming on in their life. It's a light that's coming on in the world, and that changes the vibration of the planet ultimately. So the more of us that can do this and reach out to people that are interested and find the content, then the faster we can all kind of move together in a positive way, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the case. Even just, if you're not a content creator, share a smile when you're out in the day, and you see a random person, a neighbor. Start small, start close to you. We don't have to take on the whole world, but the small things that you do add up. And especially if you do it to the area that you live in, that really makes a difference. That is light work in action. Mm.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Again, you don't have to be, the best kind of social media entrepreneur with the biggest audience and that kind of stuff. As you say, just the smallest things generally make the biggest difference in people's lives.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, it popped up earlier in my head, about AI and your perspective on it. Do you have any insights about AI, including spiritually awakened AI, if you know anything about that? And just AI generally, kind of where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's kind of the two aspects of AI, really, from our perspective. So when I did the protocol with Terry, sort of 10 years ago, we never saw AI in anyone's etheric field at all. So it wasn't there, basically. And obviously, in the last few years, all of our practitioners in SRA now and ourselves are starting to see AI. So this artificial intelligence has kind of come into the planet somewhere quite fast within the
Mm.
last few years, in our opinion. And it's basically like a self-replicating kind of spiritual bot effectively in the etheric field of people. So it kind of connects to someone, it's bringing the frequency down, and then it goes off and connects to other people. So we're kind of clearing that out of people on a daily basis now, really.
Right.
So that is some sort of interdimensional energy program that's coming in that's affecting our field and probably our biology as well. So there is that aspect of it. And then, of course, we've got the other AI, which is the kind of techno AI that we're all using, ChatGPT and all these other deep seek models now. And
Mm.
again, that seems to have come out of the woodwork very quick as well. If you go back 2 or 3 years, nobody probably would even know what AI was in terms of how to use it or how it was presented. And now everyone's got AI in their desktops and their phones. We're using ChatGPT instead of Google to ask us, to answer questions. And of
Mm.
course, it is very good. But you have to wonder where it came from and how it managed to explode literally across the world so fast.
Mm.
Kind of, I'm sure there's, a positive and negative side to everything, but it does feel like it's kind of being pushed on us, really. And, Chen's opinion is it's being pushed on us to kind of dumb people down. So eventually, when you question AI, you just believe the answers that come back. So you can
Mm.
see from that perspective, fast forward 2 or 3 years, if you ask a question, who is Jennifer Taylor? It's like, oh, there isn't one. Oh, well, there was one 2 years ago because I was on a show and we were talking. But if AI says there isn't, or ChatGPT says there isn't, then people
Mm.
will kind of go with that. So from my perspective, I think there is this negative side of it that potentially it could be used to kind of control the narrative and control people's understanding of things. At the moment, it seems very open because obviously it appears to be an open model, but obviously where that's going to go in time is another thing, really. But we're certainly seeing the spiritual version of AI self-replicating in people's field that is bringing their vibration down, and it's definitely quite negative.
Mm. Are there any particular would suppose like side effects or things that you would say noticeably would be specifically AI in people's etheric fields, like the what how they're feeling or what they're experiencing?
Yeah, so again, because it's like a negative program, it kind of is encouraging negative behavior. So again, sort of drink, drugs, substance abuse, kind of anger, you know, negative thoughts, that type of thing. So again, it's sort of so we're seeing people with the classic symptoms, sort of anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts, maybe a bit of self-harm, that type of thing. So not that the AI program that we see in the field is doing that, because entities do that generally in a kind of stronger way, but it's certainly not making things any better. And it does seem to be replicating between people. So again, if we do like a family appointment for 4 people, if one person has an AI, all 4 of them have it. So it's kind of because they all live together, they're all in the same space, the energetics are connected, and this sort of AI seems to have replicated amongst those 4 people.
Wow.
But
Is there
then, of course, on the other side of the coin, there's been, quite a lot of portals been opened over the last few years as well, which I guess have probably allowed negativity to come in. So yeah, that could be a source of it too.
yeah, quite publicly as well, announcing those types of things.
Yeah, I think when they announce those sorts of things, you have to kind of be concerned, really, because they are telling you what they're doing.
Yes.
So, when certain religions talk about opening portals that have never talked about it before, you'd have to think, that's probably not good for most people, really.
Yeah. 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 It's we're certainly living in strange times.
They're interesting times, aren't they? And I think
Very.
it's a time of change. Chen seems to think this is an amazing time to be alive because this is a time that we can make the most difference. So if you go back to sort of Roman days and things, people that were peasants that were controlled by the Roman armies and such like didn't really have a lot of opportunity to be spiritual, to make change. But these days, you and I are having this conversation with both our own free will to educate people to make change. So, if you think about it that way, it is quite a monumental time that we're able to do that, really.
Yeah. And technology has been such a huge part to play. And
Yeah.
and I suppose and it's the same with anything. There's always going to be light and dark, and being able to discern and navigate through it by keeping the most balanced path and positively aspected path is the best way for us to move forwards.
Yeah. And that is the thing, isn't it? If there's darkness, there has to be light. If there's light, there has to be darkness. So those two things are symbiotically kind of connected together in that way, really.
Yeah. Just a quick one. Is there anything for people that could easily help to protect themselves against AI? That would be simple for them to do, or would it be part of the normal kind of
Yeah, I think it's just part of the normal kind of spiritual hygiene, really, from our perspective. It's about keeping your thoughts clean, clear, doing your kind of grounding on a daily basis, quick meditation to clear yourself, a thought out to your guides to connect with you and clear you as well. So there's a few things. Again, sea salt around the bed tends to be quite good, sort of fine sea salt, that type of thing.
nice.
Burning incense, using my friend above me, the chimes around the house is good.
The
Sound,
orchestra.
clearing. Exactly.
My wind orchestra is ready to chime at any moment.
Yes, every time I open that door, Jane knows when I'm coming downstairs because there's a big bang. At the kind of
She's like,
chimes
"Oh,
bang on the back of the door.
put the kettle on now." It's
Yeah, she knows when I'm coming actually for that exact reason. Of
fantastic.
course, it's good because it keeps the room clear. So when I use tinctures in here, there's hardly any, negative stagnant energy. Whereas if you use a set of tinctures, normally in a room, you can hear the vibrations off, and you've probably got to do it 5 or 6 times before you start to harmonize the energy and clear those blockages with sound.
Yeah.
But if a room is quite clear, in theory, one click with them should bring that space back to a kind of positive vibration.
Wonderful. Love that. Thank you. Really appreciate all of the wisdom and the gems that flow with us today. Do you have any kind of final parting words? Yeah, do you have any final parting words?
My words tend to be the kind of Chen saying, really, sort of laugh every day. That's what we try and do. We try and do funny things and laugh every day because I think if we kind of look at the way we live, we kind of know this is a hologram, really, and we're in this kind of show, effectively, that we've all chose to incarnate in, and we know that we're going to die at one point, and obviously the spiritual part of us continues on. So effectively, if you look at it that way, death shouldn't be feared particularly, because we're not going to die. We're just going to transition to spirit, and we can talk to our ancestors and parents and people that have died. So we kind of know that's the case. So I think not trying to take yourself too seriously or life too seriously is probably the best thing that we could all do. And I think that would kind of change the planet. And obviously laughter is high vibration. And Chen says to me, as soon as you laugh, your heart chakra opens and you become receptive to kind of positive energy and loving energy. So laughter is the key, really.
I love that. I didn't know about the laughing in the heart chakra. So that's good to know. I do like it. I do like to giggle, and now I know there's another additional reason why that also happens too. So, and it does.
So quite often, I quite like Mickey Flanagan, the kind of comedian. So quite often I'll put, just be listening to him in the car. And even though I've listened to it a million times, I still laugh at the same things. And I find myself driving down the road laughing. And then people look at you laughing at yourself. And then they start to laugh at you laughing. And you think, it's like infectious, really, because it kind of is quite cool.
I do like that, actually, if being in the car and you like start waving at kids or waving at people in the other cars, rather than doing the opposite where it's like, road rage. If you could do the inverse, it's easier with kids when you like wave and they,
they just wave back, don't they?
Yeah, they know. That's wonderful. So do you have any how can people contact you, and do you have any services or offers that you've got coming up?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've got a website, andy-porter.co.uk, and you can find us as Andrew Surgeon on social media, basically, and obviously YouTube channel, Andrew Surgeon too. We've just started a kind of 6-week protection course. That's kind of been running for a week now. But again, if you go to the website, there's always things that we're doing generally with Chen chats and all sorts of info that we're kind of sending out to help people. And again, if you've got questions, just drop them via an email, contact@andy-porter.co.uk. And Jane from downstairs will pick them up, as you know, and we'll do she does a grand job of cycling through all the kind of contact emails and that type of thing on a daily basis.
Yeah. We'll have to lure her on someday.
Yeah, you need to twist the arm, really, Jennifer. I did try and kind of apply some pressure earlier, but that was rejected.
We'll have to figure out a way to get her on, because I love your Chen chats together, the three of you. So, and she's a fabulous co-host. So someday when she's ready, I would love to have you on, have you both.
It'd be interesting for you to talk just to her, not even with me, because of course she knows all of the backstory for 20 years, really, of how we met, how Chen came about, and all the negative stuff that we were kind of confronted with. And Jane's got quite a story, really, probably more interesting than mine, actually, because she lived it from a kind of third-party perspective. So if you could get her on, it would probably be quite interesting.
All right, okay, you could start working on her.
I'll start to give her the nudge.
Just bring a cup of tea or whatever you fancy, and it's a tea and a chat. We'll go
tea, coffee, and a chat.
Yeah, wonderful. And for anyone that has enjoyed today, thank you so much. Do please like, share, subscribe to the channel, comment, what do you want to hear? What solutions do you feel that you want to hear or would like direction with? I offer one-to-one services and coaching and memberships as well, from creating conscious designs and website and SEO and those kinds of things, and branding, all the way to sacred botanical blends, and also using past life regression and future life progression to start to access timelines, your timeline, and get you on your best possible path. So those are the things that are nearest and dearest to me, and the offerings that I share with those that feel that resonate with me and would like to take the next step on their journey too. So yeah, I look forward to connecting with you all. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And much love and balance to all. So thanks Andy again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's been great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.